Hello and welcome to the Habit Architect. This is Michael Cups, and we're now in season two. So you'll see a few new graphics, a new look and feel, but hopefully the same or better content this season as well. So I just want to mention that you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere, YouTube as well, and we go live on LinkedIn and YouTube, so you can watch the videos there. Or you can get the sound on other areas. If you could do us a favor and just like us or subscribe or whatever their mechanism is to follow, we would surely appreciate that. And I'd also like to ask you, if you are interested in being on the podcast and you have an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Just drop it in a DM to us, and or let us know a comment or two about what topics you would like us to discuss in the future. So as we get on with today, again, it is sponsored by Time Bandit. So go to timebandit.io and check it out. I'm really excited about our guest today because what I really like about the Habit Architect in season one and moving forward in season two is that we have different people from different backgrounds and different outcomes, and what we can explore is the journey in which they did that and what the lessons they learned through the process. And this guest is one of those. I've really enjoyed getting to know him. He is based here in the Dallas area with me. Andrew is going to talk a little bit about his journey and his companies and everything else that he's done. Andrew, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I am doing well. Thanks for asking. How about yourself?
Very good. Very good. It's a lovely summer day here in Texas. A little hot, but that's to be. I did notice that we haven't even hit 100 yet this year. So
that's incredible. Just wait.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, Andrew, why don't we start with just you giving an introduction of yourself and who you are and what you do.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Well, I like to think that I'm an engineer. As you said, my name is Andrew Olowu. The name is from Nigeria. I grew up in Nigeria for most of my life and studied computer engineering. And it's a funny story. I'll get to how I got to computer engineering. But I like to think of myself as an engineer turned entrepreneur. So from my accent, you can tell I'm from Nigeria. If you didn't know, it's in West Africa. And Nigeria, really, growing up in the 80s, I was privileged really to have access to a computer. My mom bought a computer for us, and I spent countless hours playing video games on it. This was in the mid to late 80s. And my mom, was really forward thinking and really got us that. And it really spurred something in me. It was really seminal for me because I got thinking one day that how was this computer created? Who had the ingenuity to create a computer that keeps me entertained for hours as a kid? And I played this game called Prince of Persia. I'll never forget. And I, hopped around the 2D screen all day. And it just really sparked my interest in computers. And my mind was made. I must have been 8 years old when this happened. And I said, my mind is made. I'm going to be a computer scientist, computer engineer.
Nice.
And you fast forward a few short years after that, in the mid 90s, 95, I had an opportunity to migrate to America. And, I focused all my attention and all my abilities to acquiring computer engineering knowledge. I took summer programs at Bentley College. I joined the Massachusetts pre-engineering program, and we built, structures, bridges made out of toothpicks, and we did a lot of challenges. I also studied computer science, computer engineering at Northeastern University. So I sort of did everything to get me to that point. And today I'm the CTO of Axxess. It's a health tech company based in Dallas. We have global offices, over 1,200 employees. I also have two companies that I run on the side. It's a tech enablement company in Nigeria, as well as a renewable energy company also based in Nigeria. Among that, I do a lot of investment. So I keep myself busy running those companies. But at the moment, really just excited to be here with you and kind of talk about some of the topics that I know that you're very passionate about.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, and what a great story. I mean, especially with the backdrop in the U.S. today, with the questions about integration, and I'll use that kind of loosely. The questions about it, and I saw that they're talking again about H-1 visa restrictions and things like that. But this is when I listen to your story, it's the American dream, so to speak, and if you will, because not only did you come here and take a huge chance and leave your homeland behind, but now you're employing people, right? You're putting people to work. You're creating more jobs. You're creating that, and it's the story that I think people need to remember, that when you get rid of the negative news, there's actual positive stories that help the U.S. and help you and help what you're doing back with your new investments and so forth. So it's really exciting. So thank you so much for talking about that. Can you tell us a little bit about, why don't we talk about that coming to America? I mean, as a young kid, and deciding, I know you kind of figured out you wanted to be in computer science, but you took that leap, you got on that plane and landed, I guess, in Boston, which is probably very culturally different, but more importantly, climate different. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yes, that was an interesting journey. I describe it first as a culture shock, Michael. Getting down from the plane. I've been on many planes before, but I'd never seen snow before. And so coming from Nigeria, very tropical weather, and coming out of Boston Logan Airport, and the first thing I noticed was the dirty snow on the side of the road, on the curb. And I was like, whoa, this wasn't what I saw in the movies, like the Home Alone movies, all the movies I watched growing up. It was powder white snow. But the first thing was really culture shock, learning how America works, going to school here, understanding how the transit system works and just how life works, and even just assimilating to the culture, the music of the time. We're talking 30 years ago now, but just learning, it was like learning all over again, and having that open-mindedness to make new friends and to learn new things and to adjust. And essentially the word we used back then, if I were to recall the word, is Americanize. I had to Americanize very quickly. So at the first, layer, it's a culture shock that you have to adjust to. And I think the next thing that kicks in is really seeing America for what it is and seeing all the opportunities ahead of you. So once you adjust, you have to now start to take advantage of so many opportunities. I signed up for everything. I think in high school, I was the captain of the soccer team. I was the president of the French club. I was the president of the National Honor Society. I was part of the debate mock trial team. I did everything. I just wanted to learn. I saw America for what it was, and it was a land of opportunity. And that, that immigrant story, like you said, is really an American dream for a lot of people. And so when you overcome the culture shock and you Americanize, assimilate a little bit, then you can take advantage of what America has to offer. So lots of stories there. I recall fondly taking a bus for the first time and not knowing how a bus card works, and having to have the driver explain it to me. And how, you could either drop a quarter in or you could get a bus pass that you swipe. So I didn't know how to do either one, but there are so many stories like that, but they're precious memory now. But I've since moved from Boston. I live in Dallas, as you said, and I can share more stories of back in my early days in America.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, and that we could have a whole session just on that, just acclimating. And you and I over lunch one time, you were telling me about how, as somebody new to the country, other kids kind of had their plan. They already knew all that stuff that you didn't know, like how to use the bus and which bus to catch and things like that. So, absolutely. I mean, I'm guessing that built somewhat of a discipline in you to kind of get there. But what really fascinated me about talking with you is I think you're a fan of the book Turning Pro, which is a book that I think Craftsman wrote, and I've since read it again since you took me off to it. But I want to talk about that. So from going to Northeastern, summer college programs in Bentley, all of those things, how did you get to be a successful CTO? And is Turning Pro part of that?
No, absolutely. I think, the way I see it is the book really articulated the experience that I had. So I didn't read the book early in my career, but I read it maybe mid-career, and it just explained, it was an aha. That was why a lot of things happened. So it put words to what happened to, what experience I went through to get to this point. So for those that don't know, Turning Pros by Stephen Pressfield, great book. He sees the world as, being either an amateur or as seeing the world as a professional. So the things that happen to us can either be, we can look at it from a moral standpoint, right? Good or bad. We can see from a therapeutic standpoint, well or sick, or you can see it either as a professional or as an amateur. So I from the day one, like I said, I got over the culture shock and assimilated. I really saw the opportunities and I had to professionalize very quickly. So, what do I mean by that? So, in college, I was able to work and go to school at the same time. So, I took on jobs and I needed to do that to earn, money to be able to afford, food and different things. But it was really about being professional and saying, well, there's a time for me to study and go to school, and there's a time for me to also work and earn income. So it taught me very earlier on, really, I taught myself that if I really wanted to achieve the success I want to achieve, I'm going to have to be really professional about how I approach the world. So I'm not going to say that I was always, wine
Right.
tied. I always knew I was gonna, be a CTO or own several companies or do several investments. But I just always knew that there was an opportunity in this country to be successful if you applied yourself. And
Yep.
so the examples around me, my mom, growing up, I was the second boy of four children, two boys, two girls, and my dad died when I was young. And so my mom really instilled in me earlier on that need to really grow up and be professional and be not professional, but to be independent. She sparked this independence in me where I was able to travel across the Atlantic Ocean at 15 by myself, and live with my uncle. And he's another person that had a huge impact on me because when I landed in America and I started to go to school, I would after school go, when I had time, I'd go to his office in South Boston. He had a business he ran. So my
Yeah.
exposure to my mom owning a business in Nigeria, my uncle I live with owning a business, and me having to spend some, a couple of days a week working with him and learning how to
Yep.
run a business really already set me on a path where I needed to be serious about my life at an early age. I needed to again grasp all the opportunities and set a path, excuse me, an action plan for me to
Yep.
get there. So I just had good examples. I was trained. I was brought up to be independent. And my uncle already had a business. So I had a lot of inspiration. And
Yeah.
so coming to America and getting to the point where I'm CTO of Axxess and owning other businesses was, in hindsight now, it looks like, it looks easy, but it wasn't easy.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
I the opportunity to connect with a childhood friend who was already doing business, and we were able to start Access Technology 17 years ago. So that was also a very important moment in my life where I had acquired the right skills working for really famous brands like Hewlett Packard,
Uh,
T-Mobile, BMW. So I gained a lot of experience after college. I worked for them, and I signed up for everything. I remember when I
yeah.
moved to Texas. I'll tell you this story, and I'll kind of bring it all home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked for BMW USA, and we used to be offered half day Fridays as a perk. This was 2006 to maybe 2008, and I never took that opportunity because I wanted to learn. I wanted to be on call. I wanted to make systems. Our BMWUSA.com website was up and running, and I took that same sort of intensity and that professionalism
Yep.
into what I do today with Access and with the other businesses, where you want to integrate your life such that you can work and you can play and you can always be in a position to offer value and to be available to do great things. So I'll begin by saying that I connected with my friend John. He's the founder and CEO of Access, and I joined to build the technology. And I had enough confidence in myself from the experience I'd gained from the professional approach I took, and I just always knew we would be successful. So I'm grateful that we can say that today. Lots of
Yep.
businesses make it this far. We're 17 years in, lots of employees, lots of success, and we continue to dominate the market, the home health.
Yes, you are. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. If you say your name, people go, "Oh yeah, I know them." So I'm curious if you're thinking about your younger self, or maybe just kids that are coming up. I mean, was there a defining moment that you said, "Hey, I'm going to take this opportunity because this is going to turn into something," or was it just a gradual build?
I would say it was gradual. There were seminal moments in my life, like I told you at 8.
Yeah.
learning about the computer and, getting into DOS programming. That was another thing I didn't tell you. I started to do a little bit of MS-DOS back then. And then coming to America, in the mid 90s and learning how to build websites at Bentley College. So it was gradual. I recall pivotal moments where, this set me on the course. I remember getting my first email address in the late 90s, a Yahoo account and a Hotmail account that I still have till today. Lots of spam, but I still check them from time to time.
Yeah.
Getting, my first, cell phone,
Oh, yeah.
and learning how that works. And, also, I remember interviewing for jobs right after college. This was right after the dot-com bust, and having a little bit of imposter syndrome and saying that,
Mm.
even though I know I can do this, there's not a lot of job opportunities. I'm competing with a lot of people. And, am I enough? But as soon as I overcame that, really, I saw that I could really do it. I could program very well. I could, get any job that I really put my mind to, or eventually, joining up with John, my partner, and co-founding Access Technology. So I knew I could do it. So I had overcome imposter syndrome, and it was a gradual build to get to this point. There were lots of seminal moments, lots of turning points along the way, things that kind
Yeah.
of pushed you, and there were catalysts for even more success. But ultimately, I think it's a journey. I like to think of it as a journey. It's not overnight. When things spark, you just stack up a lot of good habits. I know you like to hear that word. A lot of good habits that eventually lead, into the snowball effect, where you're so confident of the decisions you make, of the
Yeah.
direction you want to go, on the people you want to take on that journey. But it takes a long time to get to that point.
But that's a good segue into what I wanted to ask you about is you went from programming yourself to being a team leader, to being a manager, to being whatever, and now you lead a technology team, not only at Access, but also with your other investments. So
Mhm.
how do you instill that in them? Because I think, and maybe this is an over exaggeration, but a lot of kids today are looking for that magical boom, and they're just a star, and they're on Wall Street or whatever, and sometimes those happen, but for the most
Yes.
part,
Mhm.
they don't, right? For the most part, we have to grind away at it. So, how do
Absolutely.
you coach? How do you tell people to kind of live themselves in a way that's going to get them where they want to be?
I've benefited from mentoring. I could name lots of mentors, not people that you read about on the internet, not Bill Gates, but
Yeah.
actual people that mentored me in my career. I can mention a few of them. When I was at HP, I had a lady that got me really into HP. Her name is Kathy Leib. She's out in California. Fred Love was my first manager, mentored me very well. You know, I recall some of the lessons I learned from them. So mentorship is
Mhm.
very important to me. And even
Yep.
as I get older, I tend to mentor as many people as I can within and without my company. I also love reverse mentoring. I love to learn new things and keep up, because
Yeah.
now, I'm 25 years into my career. I need to
Yep.
learn, the younger people, as you say, are learning.
I
And
like that. Yeah.
so it's a matter of passing, the tried and true knowledge down, and making sure you also stay relevant by learning. But I've
Yeah.
learned so much on my journey. I've taken courses. I've had to understand that I need to have a growth mindset, because
Yeah.
at Axxess, my partner always says, you're either growing or dying. It's very
Yes.
binary. And
Yes.
so when you approach life with a fixed mindset, you don't grow. You can't say I
Yeah.
know it all because, I got my MBA, I got my computer science degree 20 years ago. No, you have to keep accumulating knowledge. You
Yep.
have to read, and you have to interact with people. So I think that's where it comes from. Over the years, I've taken courses like I shared one with you, Stegen leadership course,
Yes. Yes.
which is, Rand Stegen runs a very, very great program. Shout out to him, because
Yeah.
it really helped me. I talk about seminal moments in my career. Taking that intentional leadership course really cemented my purpose, my mission, and it brought a lot of clarity into me being a leader and how I should present myself. I learned so many concepts. Until today, I apply those concepts and I share them
Yes.
with lots of my direct reports and people I mentor in life. But ultimately, it's not an overnight success, like you said.
Right.
people may achieve that doesn't happen. Lightning does strike.
Yes.
Um, but most of us will, we have to see it as a journey, and
Yes.
the famous African, saying that how do you eat an elephant, right? It's one bite at a time. So you can't think you're gonna know everything at once. I also like to leave room for a little gray area where the knowledge that I'm pretty sure works, that I've accumulated over the years, the nuggets of
Yeah.
wisdom I have, may have evolved. I'll give you an example. I studied Moore's law in college, right?
Yes.
Great
Yes.
age of technology, turns cycles every 2 years, and the price of
Yeah.
hardware goes down. So you
Yeah.
understand Moore's law, from being in school and how the transistor gets smaller and smaller. But it can't get any smaller today, and AI and some of this new technology has made Moore's law very obsolete. So I've had
Right.
conversations with professors and directors of innovation centers, and we have really good discussions about how the world is evolving at a much quicker pace than we've seen.
Yeah.
And so I also leave room to challenge the knowledge that I have, so that I can continue to grow. So, and the advice I'll give a young person is not to be so sure of everything, and hey, I want to be a vice president today, and I know everything. You're just 25 years old. You have to give your time. You have to give yourself time to learn and to develop, and leave a little room for the gray area, the things where it allows you to be more flexible
Yeah.
than your peers, because you're open to learning and adjusting as you develop. So I'll say hopefully that addresses your question
Yeah.
a little.
It does. And what you talked about a lot, I mean, you talked about your career, but you kind of came back and said how these people influenced you, or just being willing to continue to learn gets
Yes.
you even further, because it is a steady build. And even those people that hit success, they still need to keep learning, because there's always another hill to climb somewhere. It's not always professional. It may be something personal that you want to do, et cetera. So that's what I want to turn and ask you about. I know you're a father. You're very proud of your kids. I enjoyed talking to you about your kids, and grooming them for a professional career is one thing, but how do you apply those same principles in just life?
Yeah, I mean, part of, thanks for bringing that up. I'm really proud of my kids, and I have three wonderful kids. And I give a lot of credit to my wife
Mm.
for helping raise wonderful kids. And they're still young, where you can still impress things upon them, and you can still mold them. They're not out of the house yet. They're still
Yeah.
in the early, the sort of the pubescent years. But
Yeah.
you know I've one thing I've really started to do, especially with my middle son, is start to try to use the right words for his development. So he's interested in being a professional basketball player. Now, the chances of him making it are very small, but I'm encouraging him. I take him to all the practice, but I teach him that the difference between making it as a LeBron James and a Michael Jordan, or Steph Curry, and people that don't make it to the NBA, is a lot of things, but it starts with being professional. My son told me one time he didn't want to go to basketball practice. I said, well, would LeBron James miss basketball practice? So you start to
Yep.
introduce words to let him know that, whether you feel like it or not, you have to show up. I think the struggle
Yep.
that I face today is going to the gym consistently. So for
Yeah.
me, you know, I'm trying to be as professional as I am in my
Yeah.
work as with my health, because I
Yes.
won't have the longevity to spend with the children that I love so much. And you know,
Yes.
but you have to take a professional approach where you show up every day, and you win. Essentially, showing up is half the battle, like they say. Once you show up, even if you don't have the mental capacity to even function, being present, and you give it 2%, or you give it.
Yes.
I told people in the early days, when we started our company Access, there were days where we would work 3 days in a row. I wouldn't even leave the office. We would be in the same
Yes.
course for 3 days. We're building
Yeah.
software. We knew we were going to be successful. But there were days where I I just woke up tired. I didn't want to
Yeah.
go to the office. I needed 2 more hours of sleep. I took this approach that I'm just going to show up anyways. And if my productivity level is maybe 40%, it's still
Yeah.
better than 0%. So my mindset is about being professional, showing up, and even if you don't give 100, give something, you
Yes.
know. And with
Yes.
my son, I tell him that my oldest son too is really gifted academically, and he has it naturally. He's seen a lot of how I've been professional, started businesses, and his mom is very professional, and they're taking a lot from us. They're catching a lot of things by observing us. But you also, what would have benefited me at a young age was putting the words to explain the experience of the difference between those that make it and don't make it. Is some people still show up. They
Yes.
show up, they
Yes.
don't want to, and they push themselves, and those people eventually enjoy the benefits and the success later on in life. But
Yes.
it's about making the sacrifices earlier on. And one of my friends, in fact, my wife mentioned it the other day as we talked about different things. She said that everything is hard at first, so
Yes.
why not do it? Even when you were a
Yeah.
kid, taking your first steps was hard. Everything we do in life, we forget how hard everything is. But
Yes.
eventually we overcome that, and it's easy. So why not say yes to new experiences and tough things?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's going to be hard at first, but you'll get through. So if you apply that mindset to everything, and I encourage my kids to experiment and not have fear, and be creative, and be
Yep.
professional, even at a young age, it allows them to sort of get a full and rich experience, rather than one where it's sheltered, and they don't want,
Yep.
they're afraid of taking chances, and they don't realize their full potential. So I always push, but I use the right words to sort of tell
Yep.
them, you really want this dream, there's gonna be a price of admission. Are you willing to pay that price of admission?
Yeah, you said the showing up is a big thing. I my favorite word these days, and that may change over time, but is yet. YET, just yet. And if you think about that when you start anything, your son probably couldn't make three-pointers when it first started yet,
Yes,
right? And if you
yes.
just about if I when I hear people say I can't do that, I say, yeah, it's or if they could just change those words in their head over time, whatever it is, walk, run a marathon, run a mile, whatever, walk around the block, whatever that goal is, it may not happen on day one, but if you just kind of keep that mentality that you said, show up and do it, good things happen. And that's what I love about, of course, habits and things like that. And the 1%, just get 1% better. And I'm doing that. I'm doing that this week myself. I've upped my steps. For so long I've been on 10,000. I was thinking, why did I pick 10,000? Because the app told me to, right? So I decided I'm going 30% more this week. And
I love
and
that.
and what's really interesting about it is it's taking me out of my routine. I knew how to get 10,000 steps, before waking up, because I knew walking my dog did this and did, but now been adding 3,000 more steps. I have to think about it and change my routine, which is a healthy thing to do, because not only the steps, but just the mind space that you're opening up to do something different. It's a great lesson that you said. So I'm going to wrap up. I would like to ask you a couple of kind of one hitters. So what is one habit or routine that you would never give up?
I think it's habit. I'll say it's is finding time to meditate and to kind of reflect. So I usually try to find time daily for myself.
Yes.
So I probably won't give that up.
You shouldn't. You shouldn't. That's a good one. And I know you've had a very successful journey, but I'm sure there's something you would tell your younger self. What would that be?
I'll tell my younger self not to be an imposter, that you are enough and you could do it. You had it
Yeah,
in you for long.
that's fantastic. That's a great way to end. But why don't we start with tell everybody how to find you if they're interested, and tell about your companies as well.
Thank you so much. The name of my company is Axxess, AXXESS. We're on LinkedIn, of course. I'm Andrew Olowu. I'm also on LinkedIn. My other companies are DevSeal, DEVSEAL, and White Falls Energy. So those are my other companies. So I'm all available on social media, especially on LinkedIn. So look me up and like and
Great.
follow. Thank you.
Yes, and if you're in the healthcare field, they look up Access, and if you need an app built or stuff, the dev still can do that as well. So great to
Absolutely.
see you. Great to see you again, Andrew. Thanks so much for your insights and your and just who you are and that your fact that you're sharing it, and mentorship and so forth. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Yeah, excellent. So everybody watching, thank you so much. We'll be back next week with another episode. So be sure to tune in and do subscribe on your favorite podcast channel. Thank you so much. See you next week.